stating all sides of opinions.
We as a people have understood that we have to fight corruption before it fights us back.
Poverty has a financial index, so it should be fought also with a financial weapon. Give it to the social investments program. It has been a very courageous battle.
Tuesday Live, every Tuesday at 10:30 p.m. Join us.
Hello, it's a warm welcome to Sports Radio, which is live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. I'm Good George.
It's wonderful.
President Buhari swears in acting Chief Justice of Nigeria.
I Yola Olugare, do solemnly swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Federal government calls for multi-dimensional approach to tackling drug abuse.
INEC assures international community of credible 2023 general elections.
So each time Nigeria conducts a general election, it's like a general election in the whole of West Africa.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss the exit of Nigeria's Chief Justice, plus World Trade Organization Ministerial Conference on Trade Agreements.
Nigerians began the working week with the breaking news of the resignation of the head of the judicial arm of government, the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Ibrahim Tanko Mohammed.
Now, the resignation has generated widespread comments by Nigerians, and of course, including members of the legal profession, as to the rationale behind the resignation.
Although Justice Tanko Mohammed cited health as the basis for his resignation, some analysts are of the opinion that the action might not be unconnected with the recent misunderstanding between the immediate past CJN and some other colleagues on the apex bench.
No question about that, Kieran. That view has been widely expressed. We recall that before his resignation, 14 justices of the Supreme Court, in an unprecedented move, had written to the CJN himself complaining about the poor conditions of work and other issues that they felt needed urgent attention. But what about the circumstances of the exit of the Chief Justice? This might be, of course, the first time a serving CJN has resigned voluntarily on account of ill health, and an acting CJN has already been appointed to steer the affairs of the judicial arm of government, and this has been done without delay. So, what is the task ahead of the new CJN against the backdrop of what has been playing out in the third arm of government? And what should he do to address particularly the grievances of the justices of the Supreme Court and other judicial officers at large? And what lessons are there to learn from the current situation? It's Good Morning Nigeria, and we're welcoming you to the program, as always, live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And aside the developments in the judiciary, we shall also discuss the World Trade Organization Ministerial Conference Trade Agreements, popularly called MC12, in today's edition of the program. I am Kirian Umayo. You are welcome to the program. In addition, we shall serve you, as always, complimentary segments in the course of today's package. For now, here is the morning news with Elizabeth Omari. Good morning, Elizabeth.
Good morning, Kieran and Kingsley. Here is the morning news. Justice Olukayode Ariwola has been formally sworn in as Acting Chief Justice of Nigeria. President Muhammadu Buhari performed the ceremony following the voluntary resignation of the substantive Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Ibrahim Tanko Mohammed, on health grounds.
I am Olukayode. Do solemnly swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
This occasion is an opportune time for me to, as always, assure the Nigerian judiciary that this administration is committed to ensuring the independence of the judiciary and will not do anything, nor take any steps to undermine your independence. Our nation is approaching a critical general election in 2023. The judiciary must not do anything to fail the ordinary people of Nigeria, which will make them lose confidence in the judiciary.
Away from the judiciary, Nigeria joins the rest of the United Nations in marking the 2022 International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Drugs Trafficking. The theme of this year's edition is Addressing Drug Challenges in Health and Humanitarian, with the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, spearheading the celebration. Vice President Yemi Osinbajo joined the event held at the Conference Center of the Presidential Villa in Abuja, applauds the achievements of the nation so far and also calls for a multidimensional and holistic approach to tackling drug abuse in the country.
Faith-based organizations and community leadership at the local levels. We must spearhead massive value reorientation across the country, reassessing cultural factors and systems that support drug abuse and trafficking. Our communities everywhere must rise to this challenge.
Given the dearth of treatment facilities in the country, it will be impossible to make the kind of gains we are targeting. The good news is that President Muhammadu Buhari, graciously, with the support of the National Assembly, has approved the establishment of 6 rehabilitation centers across the 6 geopolitical zones for the NDLEA.
In other news, INEC has assured the international community that the 2023 general elections will set a standard for other developing countries. Chairman of INEC, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, gave the assurance at a meeting with UN Secretary General Special Envoy to West Africa and the Sahel.
Nigeria is one out of 15 countries in the sub-region. The total number of registered voters in the other 14 countries put together is 73 million, meaning that Nigeria has 11 million more registered voters than the other countries in the sub-region put together. So each time Nigeria conducts a general election, it's like a general election in the whole of West Africa.
The Zamfara state government has cleared the air on its decision to allow individuals to legitimately acquire guns for self-defense as part of new measures to tackle the persistent security challenges bedeviling the state. The State Commissioner for Information, Ibrahim Dusara, threw more light on the new security measures during a press conference in the state's capital.
The state government is making consultations with the federal, with the presidency and the high security commands in the country with a view to obtaining permission for the Inspector General of Police to grant license to people wishing or who qualify to possess such lawful weapons to be used in defending themselves.
Meanwhile, the Chief of Defense Staff, General Lucky Irabo, has reacted to a statement by the Zamfara State Governor Bello Muhammad calling on the citizens to acquire licensed arms to protect themselves, describing it as inappropriate.
I am quite optimistic that the conduct of this joint training exercise would provide the participants and the armed forces of Nigerian personnel the prospects of enhancing cooperation and interoperability between the operational and strategic levels of military operations. The joint training exercise will enhance the capability of the participants to operate across the full spectrum of joint military operations.
And that's the morning news. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Kingsley and Kieran after the break. To stay with us.
We don't carry our pikin go hospital. I don't see why we carry pikin go hospital because of ordinary fever now.
Ordinary fever? Pikin wey im body dey hot like that.
Na cloth na soak inside water take rub her body. She don dey play even as I comot.
If na malaria na im dey worry that pikin, by now you no know say the thing for don worse pass.
No be my generator dey do that one. Abeg make I quick call mechanic.
Carry cloth and water.
Yes. For generator?
You use cloth and water clean our pikin body. Go use that same pattern for the generator. Make we see as e go work.
Sense mama. I receive sense o. See, I go do am correct now. Make you carry this phone and help me call the engineer. Make I carry her pikin sharp dey go hospital.
If fever catch you and you no go treat am sharp sharp, e fit serious pass as e dey o, especially for pikin dem wey never reach 5 years.
Do tests. If na malaria, finish your medicine. If no be malaria nko, your health worker go tell you wetin to do.
Na Federal Ministry of Health and American people dem bring una this message.
We are all Nigerians. Against all odds, we shall and must remain united. We may have our challenges, our problems, and setbacks. However, together we shall overcome them all. What doesn't break us shall make us stronger. This is the mindset that shall bring peace, progress, and prosperity to our beloved country. Do not let tribal and religious sentiments govern how you think, act, or feel. Don't be influenced by those who want to destroy our precious national unity. Everybody who's a Nigerian is your brother and your sister. This is the mindset of the new Nigeria. It is also the mindset that we must all adopt. Let us support each other in creating the Nigeria of our dreams. This message is from the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
To every politician, as the campaigns gain momentum and passions begin to rise, remember, the errors of your opponents do not make you a success. Do not run down your opponent and inflame passions to violence between and among your supporters. What counts is what you plan to do for the electorate and how you intend to relieve the sufferings and bring succor. Nigeria is in dire need of patriotic leaders at all levels, leaders who will make national development their priority. Concentrate on telling the electorate what you intend to do when you get into office. Focus on making your vision clear to the electorate. Don't engage in verbal abuses, fake news, or speeches. Keep dealing with issues that will bring progress. You win the hearts and minds of the people by being above board, by being civil, patriotic, and showing empathy. Let's join hands to make the 2023 elections peaceful. A message from the National Orientation Agency.
All right, well, thank you for staying with us on Good Morning Nigeria. Now, time for business news. The Small and Medium Enterprises Development Agency of Nigeria, SMEDAN, is taking the lead in the commemoration of 2022 World MSMEs Day to highlight their contributions to the economy. Let's now join Aleka Obalachi Arwa for details of that and more.
As Nigeria joins the global business community to celebrate the contributions of micro, small and medium enterprises to the economy amid the COVID-19 pandemic, conflict and climate-related issues were some of the challenges discussed. Stakeholders speak on prospects amid economic recovery and prosperity.
The agency is focusing on strengthening MSME supply chain to power self-reliant MSMEs. Consequently, policy, technology, leadership and skills needs to be upscaled to drive the entire ecosystem.
Formal SMEs contribute up to 40% of national income in emerging economies. These numbers are significantly high when informal SMEs are included.
Challenge any entrepreneur should be facing in Nigeria now. In all sincerity, apart from that, there's no light, and the other alternative means of light, which is to power either your generator with diesel or fuel, is not available. And working capital, we'll say, is also a bit challenging if you use all your working capital to actually use it to source for power.
A theme for this year's MSMEs Day is resilience and rebuilding MSMEs for sustainable development. In taking a look at Monday tradings on the floor of the exchange. With business news, Aleka Obalachi Arwa.
Many thanks, Aleka, for the business news package on Good Morning Nigeria. Newspaper review is next for us.
The resignation of course, we are diving into newspaper review, and here we have Bayo Atuyebi with us. Bayo, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Kiri.
Yes, I was about to fast forward.
Fast forward, that's right. So the issue of the resignation of the CJN. All right, Kiri, let's take a look at the window page of the New Telegraph. As you would expect, I mean, all the papers have on their front pages this morning the resignation of Justice Tanko Ibrahim Muhammad as Chief Justice of the Federation. But let's begin by taking a look at the front page, as I said, of the New Telegraph, incorporating other headlines. Looming U.S. recession threatens capital inflows into Nigeria. That's one of the headlines on the front page. Insecurity, Catholic churches and others tighten security during service hours in Osun. Gulak's killers, police arrest another suspect. NUC, that's National Universities Commission, and stakeholders move to rejig varsity curriculum. Federal government enforces 10 naira per litre sugar tax on carbonated drinks. That's on page 25. Buhari swears in Ariwola as acting CJN as Tanko resigns, cites ill health. That, of course, is the story you can see there on the front page. Organ donor claim. Ekweremadu and wife drag Nimsi and others to court. The court fixes July 1 for hearing. Unremitted deductions, Ogun workers embark on indefinite strike. 2023, APC debunks alleged 6.5 trillion naira budget to compromise electorate and INEC. 2023, I take that again, APC debunks alleged 6.5 trillion naira budget to compromise electorate and INEC. You have details of that story inside the paper. Now, the second lead story on the front page is right there at the foot of the page. It says, tension as Ansaru terrorists ban political activities in parts of Kaduna. Killian.
All right, now let's turn to Punch newspaper. Above the name flag of the Punch. Fuel subsidy refinery rehabilitation go up 1.3 trillion naira in 5 months. That's according to the NNPC. The details on page 21. Federal government rakes in over 2 trillion naira from marginal oil field sale. It's on page 22. And on page 14, we have a story on Tinubu's men rule parties without presidential candidates and others. Now, that's the kicker. Federal government probes organ donors data privacy breach. This is on page 22. All right, now below the name nameplate of the Punch newspaper, we have the lead story, Supreme Court crisis, just as Kinsley also read. NBA wants ex-CJN probed. Arula sworn in. Workers demand autonomy. Now, 3 riders to that. Ex-CJN's probe necessary for justice administration, say NBA chapters. We've been vindicated. Justices are awake from slumber. That's according to Jason. Now, no allegation should be swept under the carpet, CSOs insist. All right, now below the photo story, which is of course the swearing in of the new CJN, we have other stories. 306,489 tested positive for HIV in 2021, says NACA. That's on page 15. Now, JAM to probe CBT centers over extortion, threatens fine. It's on page 15. Benue cop detained for allegedly killing driver over bribe. That story is on page 5. All right, now at the bottom of the Punch newspaper, CDS false self-defense order, Zamfara government adamant. It's in page 16. Bauchiman lures teenager to farm, plucks out eyes for ritual. It's on page 5. A lot of things are really happening. All right, now police arrest suspected killer of Jonathan's ex-aide, Golak. That's on page 14. But let's bring you in here, and I'd like you to speak to one or two of these, but not necessarily the issue of CGN, because of course we're going to give that a treat, on the program this morning. This issue of testing positive for HIV, does it mean that this has reared its ugly head back again in the country?
Well, the factors that predispose persons to test positive to HIV have not been completely removed. What has happened is that there have been precaution and other measures taken which has limited the infection and its spread. If at any point in time those measures are abandoned, there is a tendency, if you go adventurous about sexual activity, there's a tendency that you are likely to come in contact with them, because HIV positive is in danger and it has not been eradicated. It is lurking there. Because of measures, it has been contained and it is having less effect. The other story that has come to the fore, apart from that of the new Chief Justice and the resignation of the former, is the issue of self-defense. The Chief of Defense Staff, General Loki Rabo, has complained that the governor of Zamfara State does not have the powers to authorize the Commissioner of Police to issue arms to persons to bear arms. He said he doesn't have that powers. Nevertheless,
to issue licenses.
Yes, he said he doesn't have the powers. The Chief of Defense Staff is expressing serious concern about that. But the Commissioner for Information in Zamfara State, Ibrahim Dosara, is emphatic and saying that in Zamfara State, their position is that crime, in spite of several measures that have been adopted, has persisted because of the efforts of the person he described as saboteurs or conflict entrepreneurs. They are dominated there, and therefore the thing has continued, and therefore they have no choice but to ask citizens to defend themselves.
Yes, it is a good issue you've thrown up, because it's a situation where a community will be sleeping, and all of a sudden people will come, besiege them, attack them, kill them massively, and it has continued over time, over the years. I mean, under normal circumstances, what would have thought? Look, why would I just die like a chicken? Why wouldn't I protect myself one way or the other? The law is there, yes. I read from what of the military personnel said, which is very clear. But then, how do people just stay and die? Knowing that, look, I could be attacked tomorrow, I have nothing to tell myself, nothing, just stay and you come and be butchered.
What Kingsley will describe as a catch-22 situation. You don't have sufficient security men to be present everywhere, and criminals are having their presence and dominating everywhere and harassing and killing people. So the option now is, can you have a day gun or a gun that you have a license to face a man who has an automatic self-loading machine gun? Those are the challenges.
But the point that if the man with machine gun knows that, look, he could also be attacked, then that's fear too. They also are not prepared to die in the first place. Yes. So you have a better machine or whatever it is. I have a lower one, but if you know that I have something to defend myself, it's a different scenario. So think twice before you take action.
We discussed this briefly yesterday. That will be super review when the story first broke here, and there are different perspectives to it, including what you just raised. But the concern of the Chief of Defense Staff is simple, because when you know, there's the literal expression, the call to arms. Which is to say, get ready, get prepared to confront a challenge or a situation that is menacing. But this is not just now in the literal sense. What the governor suggested, or the state government suggested, is that some persons in the 19 emirates of the state should apply for licenses to arm themselves, and by one calculation that will come to some 9,500 weapons in the hands of citizens in Zamfara. Now, how do you deal with that? How do you also deal with the issue of potential misuse? Look at the United States, for instance. I mean, there are constant references to the Second Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, and that Second Amendment is a problem for the United States, because it's been elaborated and interpreted to such a situation where by the time you are 18 years, or sometimes even less, and then you meet some other criteria, you have the right to possess a weapon, and it could be from a handgun to an automatic self-loading rifle, and then we see the consequences all across the year. So part of the running of the CDS also has to do with proper authorization for the licensing of arms. We raised it yesterday. In the past, licenses will be issued for you to possess a certain kind of weapon, but people will then obtain that license and then go and purchase a higher caliber weapons. Now, the entire country is awash with illicit weapons. How do you deal with this?
It is a big issue, no doubt about that, but the governor, I really feel for him as the chief security officer of his state. He's burying people almost on a weekly basis in their tens or hundreds, as the case may be, for years. So the man is really bothered about what is the bloodshed, in his area of jurisdiction. I'm not speaking for him, but I think he's making a point. This is human life we're talking about, and some people are so much, free to operate, and dish out menace, in communities. This people, they don't sleep at night any longer.
Let's also look at the other story.
I know that you're going to another story, because we're wrapping this up now presently. Now, the state government on Sunday also announced the default of their community security groups.
Yes, there are about 200. They are going to increase them to about 500. 500
per emirate.
Yes, per emirate.
So the whole idea with them, some people are already drawing an analogy with Amotekun and saying, look, there are restrictions on the kind of weapons that they could have, whether it's a Dane gun or an air rifle, and so on and so forth. If the state government is beefing up the capacity and capability of these community policing groups, that could be a first step. Try that before you have a call to arms to all the citizens in the 19 Emirates for each of them to kill it. I understand what you are saying. I mean, because self-preservation is the first rule of people.
Can afford to buy guns in the first place, even if you be like, not everybody has the resources to buy them.
Don't be too sure. I'm the last all over the place.
Exactly. I think the place. That's the second.
There was the good news about security. You recall in the Imo State, when the former advisor to President Goodluck Jonathan was killed, the Imo Police Command said they have arrested a 38-year-old young man who confessed to be a member of the IPOB and Eastern Security Network, and they were responsible for the death of Ahmed Gulak on his way to Sam Mbakwe Airport. They also paraded some other persons who were responsible for burning 5 police stations in Imo, including the burning of the home of Professor George, the president of
kudos to the police.
Yes.
Because some persons would have thought that the Gulak case by now is becoming a cold case, a cold file case. But that's kudos to them for what they have done in picking out this guy.
Yeah, gentlemen, we are short of time right now, and I'd like to appreciate Barry once more for being here this morning. So we'll see you again tomorrow.
Tomorrow we are
you are watching Good Morning Nigeria. We take a short break now. When we return, we shall be facing the 2 major topics for conversation this morning. Stay with us.
Do you run a breast or cervical cancer service? Are you a private or public laboratory, clinic or hospital that offer any of breast imaging, cervical cancer screening, HPV vaccination, or other breast or cervical cancer services? Is your service a primary, secondary, or tertiary center located in any part of Nigeria, no matter how remotely located it is? If yes, to any of these questions, then subscribe to the OCI Foundation's Save Breast app and become accessible and visible to millions of Nigerians. It is all for free. To subscribe, just type the Save Breast application form on Google or go to the OCI Foundation's page on www.ocifoundation.org and search for Save Breast application form. Complete the form and submit, and let millions of Nigerians patronize you, all for free. Become part of the OCI Foundation's quest to tackle breast and cervical cancers in Nigeria. And join us to rise by lifting Arise, O Nigerians! Let's applaud the courage of Flight Lieutenant Abayomi Dairo, aka the Aggressor, for his skillful and dogged escape from the bloodthirsty bandits in the forest of Zamfara State. 3 hearty cheers also to all military and security personnel who are tirelessly protecting fellow Nigerians from insurgency and banditry while maintaining peace and order. Nigerians are proud of Abayomi Dairo and all our gallant men and women in uniform for sacrificing so much to keep us safe. We admire your courage and we say thank you. God bless the armed forces. God bless Nigeria. This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
As the 2023 elections draw near, remember, evil prospers when good men and women only wish for peace, but never take a step to make peaceful elections happen. Are you a father? Are you a mother? What are you saying to your children as the elections approach? Have you warned them not to let themselves be used to cause violence? Have you explained to them what the consequences of electoral violence might be? Do your part to make peaceful elections happen. Talk to your children. Protect them from unscrupulous politicians who want to put them in harm's way, while their own children are comfortable at home, within and outside the country. Let's join hands to make 2023 elections peaceful. This message is from the National Orientation Agency, NOAA.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria. As always, we are live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Now, the resignation of Honorable Justice Ibrahim Tanko Muhammad as Chief Justice of Nigeria has continued to generate conversations among Nigerians. And joining us in the studio now to discuss this topic further, we'd like to welcome two learned senior advocates of Nigeria. First, Jibrin Samuel Okutapa. So I'd like to have you on the program this morning.
Good morning, Nigerian. Good morning, sir.
All right.
Yes, we also have Mazda Afamosigwe, SAN, former NBA General Secretary. We're glad to have you this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, and we're also joining the conversation from our Kaduna studio is Femi Okero, NTA Judiciary correspondent and also a lawyer. It's a pleasure to have you, gentlemen. I'm the only non-lawyer here. I have to trade with caution. I have to be very careful with this set of people, especially my professional colleague who is also a lawyer. So it's law versus political science.
You are protected. All right, gentlemen, once again, it's our pleasure to have you join us. Let's just, if you may, get still a reportorial background to what is playing out. And we're going to Femi Okewo, who's been NTA's judicial correspondent for many years. Of course, he's walked the halls and the hallways of the Supreme Court and indeed other courts in the land. Femi, tell us what happened yesterday with the resignation of the Chief Justice. Many are saying, once again, unprecedented. How do you contextualize all of that?
I think it's a lot of people have said it, but I find it sad that we have to applaud something that should be part of our governance process. But a lot of people have said it, and I'm going to join in the chorus of giving kudos, applauding the former Chief Justice of Nigeria's position and decision to resign. I say it's supposed to be a normal part of our governance process because it is not out of place for anyone who thinks that any situation is affecting his optimal performance in office to leave that office. Resigning from offices is not anything strange in other climes, particularly in more advanced climes. But in Nigeria, the truth is that this is the first time I am seeing this at the third arm of government. And I am impressed too, like most people are. But I think that we should, our level in Nigeria should go beyond appraising things like this, which should be a normal thing if somebody thinks that he's not performing optimally. I have known, and most Nigerians have known, and particularly people who are close to the apex court, that Honorable Justice Tanko Ibrahim Muhammad was battling with a few health matters. I certainly could not have known that it was affecting his performance as a judicial officer. And one of the things that judicial officers need most is their mental ability to perform. That's why the law allows them to retire as far as age 70. Because just like professors in the universities, we need the intellectual capacity of judicial officers. And so the country needs them to be on their seat for as long as they can, continue to give that intellectual contribution to Nigeria's judicial development. So when Justice Tanko Ibrahim Muhammad decided to leave the scene, even as the number one judicial officer in Nigeria, it came to me as a surprise, but I was very, very impressed.
All right, Femi Okero, I was going to stay with you, but I also like to, get your professional colleagues and institute to also make their first contribution. So I understand, where you're coming from, because resignation is not in the lexicon of Nigerian public, servants over the years. People will have, even when he's sick, the person wants to die in office and all of that, and some persons will say, look, if it is a fight, let us slug it out and things like that. There are a number of issues, surrounding his resignation. Yes, one is health aspect. There are also insinuations, that because of some complaints by 14 out of 16 justices in that apex court, wrote a petition or to the former CJN complaining of several things lacking in that apex court. Now, let me bring in I guess Siamaze from Osibo to make comment on this resignation, general overview of the resignation of the former CJN.
Well, my first thought was that the resignation is linked to the letter by the 14 justices. Now, if you x-ray that letter by the 14 other justices of the Supreme Court, you get the impression of a Chief Justice of Nigeria who had lost control of the court, who could not quite keep in touch with the day-to-day relationship between him and the justices and among the justices, and who had no oversight of goings on in the court. So if you put that in context, then it would appear that the letter was a public vote of no confidence by his brother justices, and the resignation would appear to confirm that the content of the letter about his losing control, probably maybe on ground of this ill health, which was the reason for the resignation, was right. And it brings to the fore the question, what kind of persons do we appoint to public office? I seem to share a minority view among so many lawyers that the leadership in the judiciary should not be based on an Olubado kind of system where the most senior chief succeeds the Olubado when he transits. I am of the view that, like obtains in the US, a governor or a president should be able to nominate a person who will be able to drive the judicial policies and other administration of justice policies of the government as a head of court. But in Nigeria, that says an unpopular view. People seem to think that if you have laid board, you should take it in terms of seniority. And so sometimes it doesn't really matter whether at the time you get to become the most senior judge in the court, your health can no longer support the further additional administrative duties put on you by law. For example, the Chief Justice of Nigeria is the head of the National Judicial Council, the head of the Federal Judicial Service Commission, the head of NJI, among so many other bodies he head. He's head of the Legal Practitioner Privileges Committee. And then the person is also expected to sometimes sit as a justice of the court with other justices to render decisions in matters. And so, while it's commendable that he resigned to save the institution from the public odium, which he seemed to be dragged into in the last few days, I also think that we need to sit back and ask ourselves critical questions about how did we get here? How did we get to a situation where justice of the Supreme Court would be given Tokumbo vehicles? Let's not call it that beautiful name of refurbished vehicles. The complaints that they were giving Tokumbo vehicles and substandard vehicles, and we know that our budgeting process does not make provision for Tokumbo vehicles for public officers holding such offices. But I'm also on one hand glad that he did the honorable thing, because he could have also said, I will not leave here unless you drag me out, or you deploy some other means to get me out, because he thereby put the interest of the institution which he heads, the legal profession, at the center of his decision-making process, and saved it by having this quiet exit. And it came in the course of the weekend, so we started a new week with the news of His Lordship's resignation. And I also hope that Honorable Justice Oluka Adarowola, who was sworn in as acting Chief Justice of Nigeria, who will most likely become the next Chief Justice of Nigeria, having been one of those who is reported to have penned that petition, which is in public domain, would now be in a better position to address them, having been one of those who identified them as the issues in court, because they impinge on the administration of justice, they impinge on the ability of the people to get justice, and it had unwittingly given a poor perception of the judiciary. And at a time where the perception of the judiciary continues to slide towards the negative, I saw the ICPC perception index, which ranked the judiciary poorly, even though I always insist that some of the figures bandied about there were more speculative than real. But the point there is that if the judiciary was being seen as performing optimally or had a stellar reputation, such a perception would not be published. But it is published, yes.
All right, thank you very much, Senior Advocate Mazi Afamusigwe. Let's bring in another Senior Advocate, Jibrin Okutepa. In a sense, the resignation of the Chief Justice of the Federation, who is the head of the third arm of government, can be likened to a palace coup against the backdrop of occurrences antecedent to his resignation. How did we get here?
Well, I do not want to say that it's a palace coup, but I want to describe it as the right thing to be done. In most cases, the problem we have in Nigeria are that truth had escaped our lexicon and falsehood had been elevated to the gods of that we worship. And so in most cases, most people who walk with their heads hardly challenge the heads. We have unwittingly elevated ourselves to the status of king does no wrong, so much so that even when some judicial officers who have the privilege of leading others are misbehaving in terms of how they carry themselves around, in terms of the resources available to them, how it's not going around, in terms of how they neglected their own colleagues, most of these judges are just walking in pains and they can't talk. So within this context, therefore, I will salute the 14 justices of the Supreme Court who, when pushed to the inelasticity of patience, they no longer could bear it. And given the fact that majority of Nigerians began to perceive that the Supreme Court of Nigeria, nothing good comes from there. And this was also having a telling effect on their performances as justices of that court. Judgments coming from that court began to dwindle in terms of jurisprudential soundness, in terms of the philosophical approach that that judgment should get, in terms of the judgment of the court being a clairvoyant judgment that solve and sees tomorrow and solve tomorrow's problem. The judgment began to create some kind of problems for us in this country, and you are aware of some of those judgments. We may not call them here. And so these justices no longer have the capacity to research because they were hungry. Their welfare, by the memo done to his lordship, were totally neglected. Like my learned brother Mighty said, let's call a spade a spade. The vehicles that some of these justices of the Supreme Court are driving are not reasonable fit for commercial purposes. Not to talk about giving our judicial officer, those who have gotten to the apex of their career in the Supreme Court, that rickety vehicle, that rickety cars, and mark you, they don't go with a convoy to protect them. And these are people that finally decides, and whatever they say remain final. They are final not because they are infallible, or is that what my Lord Oputa said, but because the court had made them, the constitution had made them final. They are like the gods of justice in Nigeria. So I see the later from the 14 justices of the Supreme Court to His Lordship, the then Chief Justice of Nigeria, as opening Nigerians' eyes to the rot in the judiciary. We are just seeing the one in the Supreme Court. It's a tip of the iceberg. When that letter came out, I wrote that something must be done about it, and I got messages from judges across Nigeria. One of the letters I got from one of his lordships in Nigeria is that some of the chief judges across the countries are like judicial tigers. He described them as judicial tyrants who collude with their chief registrars to deprive their lordships of the lower courts of their benefits and calling unmerited favor from these judicial officers. So you begin to see that instead of these judges having undiluted, unpolluted arrangements, environment to deliver justice in judgments, in most cases what you see are judgment devoid of justice. And when you see judgment devoid of justice, you begin to see people rioting, politics in political matters. You are all aware, even the deaf, the blind, know that in Nigeria, democracy is not a function of the sovereignty of the people. But you know that those who didn't win election have had the electoral victory judicially stamped. And Nigerians began to ask questions, because when reasonable men and women on the street know that justice has been murdered in the judgment as delivered, then the confidence in the judicial process becomes eroded. And that is why in Nigeria today, many investors hardly come here, because a case filed today may outlive you and I. And I know as at the last, I was in the Supreme Court, their lordships were giving this 2024 for cases. Some may have the misfortune, the matter will go to 2025. Why? Because the Nigerian Supreme Court, for instance, by constitutional operation, supposed to have 21 justices of that court. At the time, my Lord Honorable Justice I.T. Mohammed, CJN as he then was, resigned his appointment, there were just 15. Now, as of today, there are 14. So that takes me to a point, and I will appeal to the acting Chief Justice of Nigeria. There is now names that people should be moved to the Supreme Court. In making that appointment, and I agree with Mazi, if you are being penciled down to go to the Supreme Court as a Justice of Court of Appeal, and you know that your health is failing you, please, in the interest of justice and Nigeria, decline. Don't force yourself to go and sit, because the job of a judge is both mental, physical, and you need to be mentally sound to be able to see and read, write, and give us sound quality judgments. That is lacking in our jurisprudence.
Thank you so much, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. It's indeed interesting that this is coming from a lawyer also, and the senior ones for that matter. I pick on two things you mentioned. Undiluted environment for a judge to make judgment, and judgment devoid of justice. That struck me, right? And we heard that this complaint by 14 justices is about the first of its kind in 60 years, right? And in a statement attributed to the Nigerian Bar Association President Olumide Bata, he alluded to the fact that public confidence in the judiciary and the legal profession is at all-time low, and you have just highlighted some of the reasons why that is so. So let me bring in Femi Okewo once more. Femi, you have covered a number of court cases over time for several years, for the NTA, and we've had direct experiences, covering specific cases at the Apex Court. How would you look at this issue of lack of confidence, public confidence on judiciary?
Now, I have been, each time a new Chief Justice of Nigeria comes into office, one of the first things that you hear such a person say is about the reform of the justice system. And the summation of what we are already discussing again now today and everywhere around Nigeria is about the need for reforms in the judicial system of Nigeria. One thing I have seen, the first time Justice Dahiru Mustafa spoke, he talked about reforms. Justice Saloma Mariam Mukhtar, in fact, made a lot of impact because she was the one that introduced assessment of judges and their performances and quarterly assessment, and that met with some resistance because some people thought that it was a way of influencing their judgments. And then Justice Mahmood too came. He talked about his own reform. Justice Onoge came and mentioned reform. One thing, however, is that these reforms are very slow at showing on the face of the judicial functions across the country. They talk about reforms, but we do not see how it really impacts on the judgments that we get in the courts. In terms of confidence of Nigerians, I remember again, I want to quote Justice Saloma Mariam Mukhtar. She said the judiciary has no army or police to enforce its orders. What it has, what it depends on for an enforcement of its orders is the confidence of Nigerians in those orders, in those court judgments. Now, if Nigerians don't have confidence in people, if Nigerians on the street, like one of our guests have just said, consider a governor, a Supreme Court governor, now it tells a lot about the confidence which Nigerians have. And that is the way judges can make themselves respected, highly respected, if, at least on the face of it, if justice is seen to be done. I expect that judges are not supposed to be apologetic about their judgments if they have gone through the thorough process of finding out or doing research or taking the law in cognizance and using the law as it should be, not using it to please some other individuals. Now, judges are not supposed to be apologetic about it, but if Nigerians on the face of their judgment know that this is not justice, because judgments are meant to achieve justice. If the ordinary man on the street knows that or feels that this is not justice, then the judicial system needs to look inwards and dig back as to how it can get the Nigerian people, the people for whom they sit, get more confidence in their judgments.
Femi Okero, thank you very much. Let's return to Mazi Afamosigwe. I mean, we can elaborate on the number of the issues and what is required to be done. But it appears that this is an aperture, as it were, to other challenges with the third arm of government throughout the country, as Kotopaise earlier mentioned, in terms of the reactions that they are getting. How might we therefore get the judiciary to self-recreate, to cleanse itself and reposition itself for purposes of justice delivery? Because there is no pretense about it. We have issues with our judiciary, and this sometimes has to do with competent leadership of the judiciary at all levels.
The judiciary is becoming insular. The judiciary is becoming deaf and dumb. In